welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. I wanted to talk a little bit about sleep today. I know this is something that I would say 99% of the OCD community struggle with, whether that be sleeping too much, a lack of sleep, disturbed sleep, any array of sleep issues are really common with OCD sufferers. And I have definitely had my fair share of struggles with sleep. I would say that's probably the one thing that I still struggle with now. So I'm gonna kind of go back to when I first started really suffering with OCD when I was about 16, and just talk about the gradual change in my sleep over the years. So when I first started really suffering with OCD, I would say I struggled to sleep. So I was feeling too anxious. My cortisol was through the roof, and sleeping was really, really difficult. And I would wake constantly with kind of pounding in my chest, sweaty, unable to kind of switch off. And I would say that kind of went on for the period of time that I was really suffering that time around, so a good couple of years. And then gradually, once I started to feel better, sleep did kind of get a little bit better. But then I've also had the opposite end of that years on, when I started really suffering again and I changed medications. So I went on to some medications medications always been a big thing for my sleep as well. So every time I've kind of had like a different relapse with a different theme, I've changed medications. Again, that was probably one of my compulsions, is just switching up medication in the hope that that would make some kind of difference to how I was feeling. But yeah, so the next time I had a really, really bad relapse, I went onto a medication that they decided that I needed something that was more of a sedative. So I went onto a medication that also had a sedentary effect. And at the time, I really liked that because sleeping was the only time when I felt like I wasn't suffering. So I would sleep really, I would take these tablets and would be asleep so quickly. I would sleep pretty much throughout the night really, really heavily. And then I would really struggle to get up in the morning. Like I would feel so like foggy, heavy headed in the mornings. And if left alone and didn't have to get up for work, didn't have to get my daughter up for school, I could have easily slept until like 1 o'clock every day. Which I find absolutely crazy now, because being off the medication, I'm just, if anything, I'm the opposite now. So I still fall asleep quite easily, but I wake a lot in the night. I probably wake like 2-3 times in the night. I think it's because I've spent years being used to like being in medicated sleeps, that now I'm not, my body's kind of a bit confused and doesn't really know what to do. Maybe I'm actually naturally a light sleeper, and I've spent years thinking that I'm a heavy sleeper because I've always been highly medicated. But yeah, now I wake up multiple times in the night, but with no anxiety. It's not a kind of waking up and feeling, that horrible drop in your stomach of, oh, I feel really anxious, because that was a big thing for me when, before I went onto the really sedentary medication, I was waking up in the night, and that was probably the worst I was feeling. So I remember it was when I was struggling with harm. I would wake up in the night and I would always have this panic that I hadn't locked the doors, and I would just kind of freeze with terror and think, oh my God, there's going to be someone in the house. And I just remember feeling absolutely terrified, which is why when I did go onto that medication, it was such a relief in a way, because I didn't have that as much. But if I did wake up in the night, it was even worse. Like if I did wake up, then the panic I felt then was quite extreme, because I had been in such a deep sleep as well. But yeah, I came off of all medication like that. probably around 6 months ago now, I think. And yeah, it's definitely been a big adjustment in the sense that I don't sleep heavy anymore. But I'm much less tired. I mean, I only sleep for, I would say, 6 hours a night, if that, some nights. Which initially I found difficult, but if anything, the quality of sleep is probably better because I'm not kind of being forced into a sleep. I'm actually naturally sleeping. And I do wake up really early now, partially because of the running, but partially because I just don't feel the need to lay in bed. I don't kind of wake up in the morning with that fear in my stomach and that, like, oh God, I've got to go through this again all day today. Because I think that was a big part of it as well, is waking up in the morning was really difficult in the sense that not only because of the medicated sleep, but waking up and just thinking, oh, I've got to go through this all again today. Not that laying in bed was ever any better either. You know, I would be laying in bed scrolling my phone. It never made me feel any better, but it was that false, that illusion of safety, thinking that, you know, at least you're in the safest place out of all of them, the least likely place to get triggered. But as we know, when you kind of make your world smaller, you'll just find new triggers. Like, laying in bed is never gonna make you feel safe because you'll find new ways to feel unsafe. I think that's why when I started to avoid things a lot more and not go out as much, I think that's why I then became so scared of things like my health, because I thought, well, yeah, I could just be sat here and something could happen to me, and you know, you don't have to leave the house to have a heart attack. So no matter what you do, you're not going to kind of get away from your fears in that way. Like, making your world smaller is never ever gonna make it better. It's only gonna swap to other things. But I've gone completely off the topic. We were talking about sleep, but I like to have a ramble. So the things that I've done to help my sleep situation is not put so much emphasis on sleeping. So when I first came off the medication, that's when I started to really struggle with sleep. I couldn't get to sleep on my own. Well, I say I couldn't. I could. It was just a lot later than I was used to, and I wasn't used to the constant waking in the night. So I did really struggle with that initially, and I could feel, so when you're like in a much better place, you'll see that you can almost feel the start of something latching. So after I came off the medication, sleep was something that OCD really tried to latch to, because I wasn't used to not sleeping. I really valued my sleep, because that had always been like a safe thing for me, as being asleep, because when I was asleep I wasn't suffering. I mean, I was having nightmares, but it wasn't quite as intense. So yeah, I put a lot of value on my sleep, I think, which obviously OCD loves and will home in for. So I started to feel a bit concerned about it, and I remember saying to a couple of people, like, I'm a bit concerned that I'm gonna like have insomnia. And as I started to do this, I realised what I was doing, and I thought, I'm talking about it, I'm trying to get reassurance about it. This is the possible start of a cycle if I don't stop what I'm doing immediately. But that's a really good thing when you're in a better place, that you can see these things in a much more rational way, and you do things and you think, oh yeah, this is, I'm just doing this because this is what people do. You know, when you're really stuck with OCD, you kind of know that you're doing compulsions because you're feeling so intensely at that time that you know you're really suffering with OCD, so that you know that what you're doing is likely compulsive a lot of the time. But when you haven't been performing compulsions in a long time, it's hard for you to realise that that's what you're doing. But yeah, I noticed I was doing it, and I had a little think about it and thought, yeah, I have been saying to people that I'm concerned about it. I've been trying to come off my phone a little bit earlier at night. I've been trying to force myself to not be worried about it, rather than just like allowing my head to do what it was doing. I was kind of laying there thinking, right, don't think about it, maybe read a book, maybe distract yourself. And I realized that I was getting myself into the cycle a little bit with it, which this is the first time I've actually spoken about it to anyone, because I didn't speak to any of the coaches about it. I didn't put it in the group chats because I knew what was happening, and I knew that by speaking about it, I was making it become a thing. And it never did become a thing. There was never really any anxiety with it. It didn't become like, it didn't latch. It was the beginning of it, and I realized it was the beginning of it. So I stopped any kind of sleep hygiene that I was trying to slowly implement, stopped talking about it completely. As I say, this is the first time I've actually spoke about it to anyone here. And even now, I probably fall asleep a bit better, but I do wake in the night. I do wake really early. I definitely don't sleep as much as I used to, but I'm completely okay with that. Something else I was doing actually while I'm thinking about it, I was checking my Apple Watch stats for my sleep as well, which at the time I thought, well, actually, I just want to know if I am hitting REM. And I think I did that like twice and thought, no, this is definitely a checking compulsion at this point. So yeah, once I saw it was there, I managed to stop it before like any kind of latching happened, and obviously then leading to the anxiety. But yeah, sleep is really difficult in the sense that it will latch for most people, because we are so concerned about feeling any worse than we already feel with OCD. Like, the last thing you want when you're suffering with OCD is for something like your sleep to result in you feeling even worse. And there's a lot of fears around sleep as well, with the it shortens your lifespan if you don't get a certain amount of sleep, or the same as with caffeine, it increases your anxiety. There's so many things around sleep that make sleep become so important for people and make them so anxious when they don't get it. And that's why, like with all the other fears, it's really, really important to stop putting so much emphasis on how badly you need it, because in reality, you don't actually need anywhere as much sleep as you would like. As I say, I probably sleep for 6 hours, if that now, which isn't ideal. I know, like 8 to 9 was what I used to get, apart from when I was really medicated, and then it was a hell of a lot more than that. But I probably feel more awake and more like I've had a good night's sleep now that my sleep is like in a natural state, not in a medicated state. But no, I'm not concerned about the fact that I no longer get 8 hours. I would prefer to get 8 hours because I'm sure that is the optimal amount of sleep. However, I don't get it. So there's no point in being concerned about something that I can't, well, I'm not saying I couldn't get it if I really tried to, but at that point it becomes compulsive and it becomes a problem. So I would rather just let it happen how it happens, not put too much emphasis on it. If it takes me a while to fall asleep at night, it takes me a while to fall asleep. If I wake up, I'll sit there and wait until I fall asleep again. It doesn't need to be a big issue, and we do make it into a bigger issue, which is completely natural because we're scared. All of these things, it's easy to say when you're not currently in it, and I completely understand that, because I find these things obviously a lot easier to talk about than when I'm actually suffering with them myself. When I was suffering with them myself, I couldn't speak rationally about it, but that's the whole point in becoming more rational, so that you can have that better perspective on these things. But yes, I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any topics that you want me to cover, just pop a comment down below and I will add them to my list.